What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be going over how to do punches or attacks in our third-person tutorial, which is our action RPG tutorial now. We are going to also switch our mesh and add some animations for this character. I'll show you how to do that. The most important part is the attacking part of this tutorial. However, it is good to know how to make your own animations and or get your own animations and put them into the game, especially considering we don't have the mannequin rig animations for punch or anything like that. Alrighty. So we're going to start off by going into the code like we usually do, because regardless if we have the mannequin or not, we need to set up the logic to perform attacks. If you go into your header file of your character, scroll down, and I added a function called void punch. You can call it void attack, whatever you'd like, whatever makes sense to you. For me, I knew this button was going to be specifically a punch attack, so I called it void punch, but it doesn't matter. Just have a function that we can trigger when we press a button. Then, I'm also going to add a boolean called has punched. This way we can determine in the animation state machine if the player should be punching currently and when they should stop. Depend on if we're holding it or if we've released it, or just if the animation ends, depending on what we want. Go into your CPP file for the character. And yes, I know it's called Gears of War template character. Don't worry about that. We're making an action RPG. Just a bad naming convention. Make sure you set has punch to be false by default in the constructor, because, you know, when our player spawns, he's not going to be punching by default. Now, in your setup player input component, we've done this a few times over the series, but this is going to be the first time where we're doing it to actually perform an action with our character, as opposed to just modifying speed values or their character movement or the zoom. This time we're going to be actually making them play an animation. So you can copy one of the ones you've done up above or write this from scratch, but basically bind the action punch to the new function that we made. So the new function we made was called punch. So this is what we need to change to make the new function. And this is found in our Unreal Engine input section. So for those that aren't aware, you go into the editor, go to Edit, Project Settings, and go to Input. You will have this list of actions and axes that can actually perform logic based on you pressing a key to activate them. So action mappings, again, are just button presses. Axis mappings are things that they'll have a value associated with them, like joysticks or like steering wheel controllers. So we're not going to be using an axis mapping, but we are going to need an action mapping. So hit plus to add a little action mapping here. Call it whatever you want. I called it punch, and then set your key. I called it 1 just because Q was already taken. I usually use Q as a default, but I didn't want to change everything around. So 1. Alright. You don't have to build or compile here or anything. That'll actually happen just during runtime. It'll pick up if you have anything there. So what we can do is go back into the code. And at this point, I'd say if you want to watch any of the prior episodes to catch up to where we got to so far in the tutorial, I will leave a link in this icon in the top right corner to the very first episode of the third-person tutorial. That way you can catch up if you're interested. If not, all we have to do is fill out the punch logic, and it's pretty simple, probably simpler than you would first imagine. All we're going to do is set our little boolean to true here. There will be more as time goes on, but for now, just making him actually perform the animation and all that stuff, we just need to make sure we have this boolean set. That way we can set in the state machine, yes, go to the punch state. Okay. I'm going to scroll back up here. We're pretty much done with the code here. What we want to do now is add our new character into the game. So you can use the mannequin, especially if you have animations that go with him or whatever. It makes no difference. For me, I didn't have any animations to go with the mannequin skeleton, and I didn't feel like just putting in some fake animations to work. I wanted to just use a character. So this is Knight Pellegrini. Probably not how you say his name. but it's also 6 a.m. and I'm recording this. So this is Knight Pellegrini. That's what we're going to be referring to him as. I'm actually going to call him Assassin just because it's easier in the game files. But you can download him off Mixamo for free. You can use him in your projects for free, all that good stuff. Same with all the animations we get off Mixamo. So feel free to do this. Feel free to look at this icon in the top right corner right now on how to import Mixamo animations and characters into your game. It's totally free. You can do it easily and use them for commercial or whatever projects. So feel free to grab this same guy. Again, he's Knight D. Pellegrini. You can see here in my characters, I called him Assassin. I do have these folders. These are old folders, but Assassin is what has the model with the skeleton. I called this running. This was bad, but it's got the model with the Assassin. It's got all the files for my textures and such. And then it's got animations. So once you've gotten your animations and your model in and you've imported them, we can go ahead and make a new character and a new NMBP for that character. I put it in with the mannequin character, so you can actually right click on the mannequin character and just duplicate. Now it will go to this folder, which is probably why mine is here, but you can move it wherever you want afterward. Once you do this, it won't give you any trouble. You'll have all the exact same stuff you had for the mannequin. Just change out your skeletal mesh to the skeleton that came with Knight Pellegrini here. Again, ignore this running skeleton. It was something I was trying and I got working, but I used a different method. So don't worry about this. But the skeleton that you have from your new import. Okay? Use that, and then we're going to want to use our Assassin NMBP here, but we haven't set that up yet. So just keep in mind we're going to need to set that. Go to wherever you want this to be. I put this in NMBP. I hit Add New, and I hit Animation, Animation Blueprint. Once you make a new one, it'll ask you for the skeleton you want to use and the thing you want to parent off of. So for the parent class, you can parent off the mannequin if you like. I'm going to parent off Anim Instance because that's what the mannequin parents off of, and I don't need anything that the mannequin had by default. We can just set it up again and actually do it a little bit better. But then you want to pick the proper skeleton. So instead of using the UE4 mannequin skeleton, we want to use our Knight D. Pellegrini skeleton. There you go. You can hit OK. It'll make it for you. I've already done it. And then this is what I have in my NMBP. So for the NMBP, it's going to be basically the same as the mannequin's NMBP. I cleaned it up because I can't stand the way it looks. But basically, I'll open it up so you can see it. Actually, I forget exactly where it resides. So, but this one right here. Okay, so this is what the NMBP looks like for the mannequin. It's pretty gross, to be honest. We are going to end up using pretty much all this for our third-person character, so that's why I wanted to copy it, but I just made my own. You can see here, I still have Blueprint Update Animation. This is new. This is something I'm adding. But the rest of this is the same. It's try and get pawn owner is valid. Try and get pawn owner is valid. Then, get movement component is falling to set is in air. Get movement component is falling to set is in air. And then, setting the speed. Get velocity, vector length, character speed. There you go. So this is the exact same blueprint that way. Now, I didn't want to do a cast every update here, like we're doing here. If you're familiar with the fighting game tutorial, we would normally do this on begin play. So you're probably looking at me right now like, well, why the heck are you doing a cast and update? That's terrible. Yeah, but since we're spawning directly into the scene and our character's there right away, you actually get an error if you don't have some sort of arbitrary state that will stop the player from instantly going into an animation that uses this reference, because the update animation can fire before begin play, and usually does. Because of that, this character reference will be null, and then when you go to use it in the state machine, like I'm going to show you in a few minutes here, you'll get an error. Now, technically, the error is not the end of the world in the editor, but of course, you want to not have any of those when you package and all of that. So, basically, when we change this around and have some of our spawning done, you know, more professionally, let's say, or even correctly, if we dare, then we will be able to change this logic and not have this done on Blueprint Update Animation. We'll have it done on Begin Play. So right now, Begin Play isn't really important, but I'm adding it here to show this is where we're actually going to be using it from. For now, to avoid errors, we need to use it here. It'll make sense later, I promise. But basically, use everything from the AnimBP of the mannequin. These 3 comment blocks. Feel free to copy it directly. You don't have to make it neat like mine. Or, you know, some people would probably say that this is not neat. People are different with their blueprints, so that's fine. No problems there. But for me, that's what looks better. But just go ahead and add this on your Blueprint Update Animation node. Just try and get Pawn Owner. You can use this one as well if you just want to bring this over to the left. You don't need 2 separate nodes. Drag off of it. Cast to your character that we just made the punch function in. And it's cast to Gears of War template character for me. Drag off of that. And just this whole instance, you can do promote to variable right here. It'll make a variable for you, new var 0. I'm going to delete this because I already have character reference, but you can do that, or you can make a variable, click on your type in the object you want, Gears of War template character, and get an object reference. It's the same thing either way. Just make sure you're setting it because we're going to use it in the state machine, and you can't use any real, well, you can use logic in the state machine, but you can't use any code flow in the state machine. So you don't want to have to use anything that's got these white arrows. Instead, what we do is we can set it once, eventually, once this is set up properly, on Begin Play, and then use this character reference in the state machine. That's our optimal solution here. Don't worry about this for now. We'll do this at the very end. But the last thing we have to do is go into our punch state, or not our punch state, excuse me, into our anim state machine. So if it's not open by default, I can't remember if it is in the, if you've duplicated an AnimBP or not. If you made it from scratch, it definitely won't be. Go to your anim graph here. Click on state machine. I think it's called new state machine by default. I changed it just because I don't like that. I called it default state machine. Then come into here. You'll just have this entry node. It won't really do anything right now, which is fine. We're gonna make 4 states. We're gonna basically make the states that the mannequin had: idle, jump, and run, but a little bit more simple. A little bit simpler because I didn't do blend states or anything like that. So I'll show you how to set this up. Basically, right click, add state 4 times over. Idle, run, jump, and punch. Idle can go to run can go to idle. Idle and run can go to jump can return to idle, and idle can go to punch, and punch can return to idle. You can see here. Idle to go to run, the transition. When you drag an arrow between 2 nodes, I'm not going to do it again since I already have one, but if you were to do that, it would create this transition rule. This transition rule here will determine when we go from one state to the other. So if we want to go from idle to run, we want to determine the rule to do that. Basically, if our character speed is greater than 0.0, go to run. What that means is this speed right here, when we get velocity of the character, of the pawn owner specifically, then we set our character speed. Well, if our character speed is greater than 0, we should enter the running state. Otherwise, if our character speed is less than or equal to 0, which basically means just 0, but just to be on the safe side in case we somehow get a negative speed, then go ahead and return back to idle. In idle, I just play my animations. So assassin idle looks like this. Again, these are all Mixamo animations. I'm going to close the mannequins AnimBP. In run, it looks like this. Now, depending on if you want to change your animation speed, you can do it a few different ways. So for me, I have it, okay, this is his default run, and then when he's sprinting, he runs like this. Now, it looks kind of funny, but to be fair, we're sprinting insanely fast right now. You would probably never have someone sprint this fast in a game, maybe for an ability or something, but this will probably not be your regular sprint, or if it is, you'll be in a much bigger area, and it'll make more sense to do this. But what I've done is I've just taken our character speed and divided it by 600, and then used our assassin running here, clicked on it, went to our details panel, clicked on play rate where the little eyeball is. This is actually a shut eyeball. When you click it, it opens up, which means it's exposed. Then if you drag this into it, this is your new play rate. The reason I chose 600 is the FPS of the game is 60. Dividing by 600 is essentially taking the FPS multiplied by 10 and dividing the character speed by that to get your new play rate. It doesn't have any actual math like, oh, this is exactly what you should do. But for me, I find that that's always a pretty good indicator of what speeds are going to be like, regardless of how fast or slow you're moving. For now, this is fine. I was just trying to get something that worked and changed speeds with how fast you were actually moving. So again, this is how it looks normally. And then when I'm sprinting. So. Okay. From idle to jump and run to jump is the same thing. However, I am using a shared transition, which is why they are red and a little bit hard to see here, actually. Don't worry, they're the same as a regular transition. The shared transition just basically means that the transition is the same between these two. That makes sense, right? So for idle to jump, we just check if is in air. And I mean, this is set right here. We get the pawn owner, we get the movement component, we check if they're falling, and then we set if they're in the air or not. It's that simple. So if they are in the air, then we're jumping. Same with running. If we are in the air, then we're jumping. And jump just looks like this. It's cut halfway through. That way when I jump, you see I stay in my last frame until I hit the ground, and then I return. And you can have a landing animation, all that. For now, this should be perfectly fine. To make a shared transition, basically you go from one state to the other and get this transition node. Set up what you want, like is in air, and then when you're done, drag to from another node, so run the jump. Then if you click on one of your transition nodes, you can go to, I'll click on one that hasn't done it. Promote to shared, and this will make it a certain color. The colors don't matter, they're just color coded. That way you can tell which animation transitions are shared. So it'll become a color, and then you're good to go. It'll tell you the transition rule. It'll ask you to name it. I called mine shared jump. Then you can click on any transition, use shared, and then click on shared jump or whatever shared transition you want. That's what I did here, and you can see it becomes the same color. That way we know these two are the same. Okay. Lastly, we need to do our actual punch functionality, which is what we've been trying to do this whole episode. Idle to punch. Well, all we got to do is check our character reference. Remember, that's what we were setting here. That's the whole point of doing this. That way we can just grab our character reference and use variables we have in code to determine what state we're in. Check if we punched. So literally use your variable, drag it in here, pull off this, type has punched. Now remember, if you're not seeing this, there's a few things you have to check for. So I'm going to compile, give me 1 second. What we should be checking for, if we're not seeing it, is make sure that your has punched boolean is edit anywhere, blueprint, read write. That way we can see it in blueprint. That's for one. And then when you're done with the code, make sure you hit build solution. Wait for it to complete. Should say 1 succeeded. Then come into Unreal and hit compile right here. Then you should be able to see your variable. But if we had punched, we can go from idle to punch. The punch animation looks like this. Now I've deliberately selected a play rate. I didn't expose it. I just made it 2 times because I thought it was too slow. Feel free to adjust it to your liking. And then to return to idle from punch to idle, all we do is nothing. We're going to use something called automatic rule transition. So what that is right here. This automatic rule based on sequence, player, and state. This crazy name. Again, there's a much longer explanation to what's going on here. But this box, if it's not checked, what it means is that it won't automatically go to a transition. It won't automatically use a transition and go to a new state once the animation ends if there's not an applicable rule. However, if you check the box, we have no rule like from punch to idle. When the punch animation has finished, it will return back to idle as long as it doesn't have another state that it could go to instead, like a different punch animation or some sort of like recovery animation or something like that. But it'll automatically go to this rule then. So if we check this little box on the transition from punch to idle, you don't need anything in the blueprint or the code to determine that. But what we are going to do, we're going to automatically set the rule, so check this, and we're going to scroll down to the bottom, notifications, start transition event, custom blueprint event. We're going to put a name in here. I called it attack finished. This is just going to be used to reset our variable has punched. So when basically once the punch to idle transition begins, it's going to send off an event that you can call in your event graph. So you literally look for whatever you typed in. So mine was called attack finished. If I look for attack finished, and you can see it here, but if I look for attack finished, anim notify, event anim notify attack finished, that's this right here. Now I can perform logic once this occurs. So once I bring this up, I can grab my character reference yet again, right here, and set has punched. Set has punched, right here. Set it to be false. We're no longer punching, we're done, we're going to return to idle. So we can reset our variable once the animation is complete. Okay, and lastly regarding this, if you would like, make sure to unloop any of the animations you don't want looping. So your running is good and your idle is good to loop. But for your jump, I'd recommend turning it off. That way you can stick on the last frame. And of course, same with your punch. You only want to punch one time. And actually, I have it set to loop, so that's my bad. But you can see because we set it to be false. Let me back out here. You can see because of this animation transition event here, we're setting it to be false. So even with it looping, it exits the state. So either way, it'll work. But I just kind of always make sure they're in the right state. There you go, guys. So now you can use attacks. You can use this with any animation. This is basically how you can do all your attacks in your game. It won't be as complicated next time you do it because you can use all the same logic, just a different boolean and a different function. We will do more functionality, of course, to do actual damage when collisions occur with that punch and depending on what enemies and such. But basically, that's all you need to do to know how to attack in your third-person game. If this video helped you, please subscribe. It's the most important thing that you can do for the channel. It just helps me know that I'm doing a good job and that you're learning something from it, so I'd really appreciate it. If you did have any issues with this video or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord. We've got a lot of really nice, really helpful members who'd be happy to set you up and fix any of your issues you have, myself included. And I can send pictures and videos if needed, if that's easier. Lastly, guys, if you'd like to come join us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Shawnthebro27. We play Dark Souls games on Wednesday, so Souls Wednesday. It's basically like any Souls game, so Demon Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, those as well. We actually just finished Dark Souls Remastered, and we're going to Dark Souls 2. On Friday, we do Resident Evil Friday, so we've been playing through Resident Evil 4 as this video is being recorded, but we've already played through the 2 and 3 remakes. If you'd like to go see the archive channel for all the Twitch streams we've done, feel free to check them out right here in this iCard, which is the Shawnthebro27 YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for the support and for watching the video. I appreciate it. Let me know what you need, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. I'm Shawnthebro. See you later.